Now, this is the painful question from Todd. Painful in the sense of, it caused me to reflect on things that I could have done better 3 decades ago. So over my 35 years of trading during the learning journey, what were the main reasons for losing large amounts of capital? In other words, what were the trading mistakes that you would now never do again? A summary of these past errors would help subscribers avoid them in the future. Look, Todd, good question. Absolutely. It's what I've been banging on about for years and years and years, why I do the Sunday videos, why I've been doing them for 15 years. And in part, why I run this business is to help people not make the mistakes that I made and waste at least a decade that I wasted easily, because there's just a smarter way to do it. As I said at the start, I could have spent 2 hours addressing this question, but I reflected on this and let me distill it down to the key things. This is pretty much in order. The biggest failure that I made was to find a mentor early on. Now, we're talking 1987 here when I started, so that sort of thing just really didn't exist, or I didn't know that it existed. So it was a case of I didn't know what I didn't know. And it's not an overstatement to say that lost decade where I just, fumbled around, didn't ever get properly serious about it, has cost me millions, probably tens of millions, because, if I apply what I now know and what I've developed in particular over the last 5 to 10 years, if you applied that to a much larger capital base, which is what I would have had I not lost at least a decade by not having someone to point me in the right direction, then that's what it's cost me. That's the reality. So, and that's why, in part, I do, because I want to provide the opportunity for people to get that guidance. That's why we do these skills building sessions, why we don't just focus in on Q&A every week, where it's easy to get your nose really close to the glass looking at individual stocks. Skills building to me is far more important, because if you build a skill, then you can apply that skill and ultimately do your own analysis, once you become skilled enough and comfortable enough with it. So yes, taking stock is a critical part of this whole process. Sometimes I get, people look at portfolio analysts, or they look at the Insiders Club and they decide that they just don't want to spend the money, which is just such false economy. I mean, honestly and truly, you're spending $1,000 or $2,000 a year to have someone that's got 3 decades of experience point you in the right direction, and the long-term benefit is, as I said at the start, it's worth millions and millions, and yet people balk at it. It is just ridiculous. So that is the number one thing that I would put forward to everybody, as if you're relatively new in the market, hook yourself up. Doesn't have to be me, but hook yourself up with someone that is very market savvy, that's been beaten to a pulp so many times they can't remember, and has learned from it, and it'll save you a huge amount of time and a huge amount of money. The second thing that it took me a long time to learn, because it's such a struggle, and that is the failure to accept that news and logic don't equal price movement. They just don't, more often than not, because the short term is all about sentiment and emotion, and any news is generally already priced in before it's announced most of the time. So if you're trying to trade the news, just forget it. You're not even on the right planet if that's what you're trying to do. And as hard as it is, you've got to try and water down the importance of a logical conclusion and elevate the importance of what the price chart is telling you. What is the smart money actually doing? That's what the price chart is telling you once you learn how to read it. It's telling you what the smart money's doing. So, They know well in advance. So that's the second thing. The third thing, and I've been pretty clear on this for some time, and the whole industry works on the basis of all these armies of analysts that do this most wonderful mathematical calculations of intrinsic value, and they make this assumption and that assumption, and they've got these massive spreadsheets of numbers, and you think, wow, with all that incredible precision, this number that they've distilled out the bottom must be gold. Well, it's not. It's a guide. That's all it is. And even if it was accurate, and most of the time it's not accurate because it's based on a whole bunch of assumptions, but even if it was accurate, the market can just do something totally different anyway. So what does it matter? Why do you need a precise number for intrinsic value? It's just a complete wasted effort. So whatever fundamental analysis you do, just be in the ballpark. Just do sufficient analysis of the right sort of things. And I do that every week in Portfolio Analyst. So, if you want to learn how to do it, just go through the archive and just watch video after video after video, because I apply the same fundamental analysis process that took me decades to understand what was relevant and what wasn't. Then just make sure you get in the ballpark, and then use the charts to gain an edge on everybody else. So once you've got a stock that over the medium to long term should do well because the fundamentals are there, then say, okay, great, that's on my watch list. Now let me look at the chart and let me find entry points where the potential downside is limited and the potential upside is significantly greater. And that's all this is about. It's about, de-risking your entry. The fourth thing, and this is a really big one, the need to be proven right. Now, we're all born with this need to be proven right because it's all tied up with our ego. If you bring ego to the stock market, you're dead. It's an absolute killer. You've got to learn to become humble with your success. You've got to learn to become resilient to your failures. Don't beat yourself up. But above all, lose the need to be right, because it'll hold you back big time. And there's still some, silly people misguided people that comment on the Sunday video that, they make some big grandstanding statement about, they think we're in a bull market or a bear market. I just smile when people make those sort of comments, because they have this, it's very clear to me, they have this need to be right. And they'll never ever make it in the stock market if that's your starting point. And the final thing in terms of the really, really important ones are the essential need for clarity around your purpose for a particular transaction and the plan. And your purpose and plan can change from stock to stock. You can have long-term investments with a certain purpose and a certain entry and exit technique, and you can have shorter-term trades which have got a completely different purpose and a different methodology for getting in and getting out. Just be very clear about which is which before you do it. So I think, Todd and everybody else, if you took on board all those 5 things, I absolutely convinced you will be a light years better trader and investor a lot faster. Now, second order factors, so things that they're not unimportant. These things are important, but they're nowhere near as important as these 5 big picture things. Inadequate technical analysis skills. Technical analysis has always fascinated me, and I look at probably 500 charts every single day. So, I'm a nut. And I became pretty accomplished at technical analysis early on. So, that's a skill that you want to develop. But I've got to tell you, it takes time. It really does take time. You're not going to get good at this in 6 months because you just won't have encountered the circumstances enough. The next thing is inadequate fundamental analysis skills. But I say inadequate because, when we go back to here, number 3, it's not that you don't do it in enough depth, it's that you don't take account of the most important factors and you don't overweight the most important factors. You might be taking into account, you might be overweighting factors that aren't important. And the final thing is just learn to be patient and disciplined, and that's, again, that just takes time. So, Todd, you gave me, I hope that wasn't too long-winded for everybody, but Todd gave me the opportunity to address, probably the most important thing that I will have to say this morning. I'd encourage everyone just to, replay this section again. You'll pick up something the next time through when you listen to me go through this. It's absolutely from the heart. It's absolutely true. And if you, go halfway along this path, you'll make a huge amount more money than you otherwise would.